Before the sun fully rises over Rome, crowds are already gathering outside a massive stone structure at the city's heart, one whose sheer scale still genuinely impresses visitors nearly 2,000 years after its construction. The Flavian amphitheater, known to us today as the Colosseum, could hold somewhere between 50 and 80,000 spectators, making it by any measure one of the largest public entertainment venues constructed anywhere in the ancient world. Commissioned by the Emperor Vespasian and completed under his son Titus in 80 AD, the amphitheater represented a significant political statement. It was built partly on the site of a previous emperor's private pleasure lake, returning this land to public use following Nero's reign. On a day when games were scheduled, Rome's ordinary daily rhythm shifted noticeably. Games could draw visitors from across the city and beyond. The promise of a full day's entertainment, entirely free to attend, was accessible to Romans across nearly every level of society. Entry followed an organized system. The exterior featured numbered entrances, corresponding to specific seating sections assigned by social rank. This sophisticated crowd management system allowed tens of thousands to enter and exit with an efficiency that rivals modern stadium designs. As spectators settled into their seats, the enormous canvas awning system known as the velarium was gradually extended overhead. Operated by a team of sailors, it provided shade, making a full day at the Colosseum considerably more comfortable than the scale might suggest. Vendors moved through the crowd throughout the day, selling food, drink, and small souvenirs to the tens of thousands assembled. The anticipation created an atmosphere comparable in terms of collective public energy to the largest modern sporting or entertainment events. Despite the vast technological and cultural distance separating ancient Rome from our own contemporary experience of large-scale public spectacle, the Colosseum's construction represented a genuinely massive undertaking, even by the standards of an empire already well accustomed to ambitious public building projects across its territories. Construction began around 70 AD under Vespasian and continued across roughly a decade, employing, according to historical estimates, tens of thousands of workers. This possibly included captured laborers from the recent Jewish-Roman War, whose conclusion provided both the considerable wealth and the workforce for this ambitious project. The structure demonstrates genuinely sophisticated Roman engineering, built primarily from travertine limestone, tuff, and concrete, arranged in a series of concentric rings. Radiating support walls distributed the enormous structural weight and its tens of thousands of spectators with a level of architectural sophistication that influenced future designs. Roman engineers incorporated an elaborate system of vaulted corridors and staircases specifically designed to facilitate efficient crowd movement throughout the massive venue. This design reflects an advanced understanding of large-scale public building circulation, developed centuries before formal architectural theory would codify similar crowd management principles. The completed structure, standing 50 meters tall, dominated the cityscape. Its opening in 80 AD was marked by games lasting 100 days. The entertainment included animal hunts and gladiatorial combat. Ancient sources even describe possibly staged naval battles achieved through deliberately flooding the arena floor. The financial cost was enormous, funded substantially through wealth captured during the Roman conquest of Jerusalem, according to inscription evidence recovered at the site. This funding reflects the practice of connecting major projects to military conquest, reinforcing the political message that the amphitheater represented tangible public benefit. Ultimately, the Colosseum stood as a symbol of Roman military success and the empire's continued territorial reach across the ancient world. As the day's formal program began, the first major event typically involved venationes, elaborate staged animal hunts that historical sources confirm represented a genuinely significant and popular component of the overall day's entertainment, often occupying much of the morning schedule. These hunts featured an extraordinary range of animals captured and transported from across the enormous geographic breadth of the Roman Empire, including lions and leopards from North Africa, bears from various northern provinces, and, according to surviving historical accounts, occasionally even more exotic species, including elephants, and, on notably rare and expensive occasions, animals as unusual as rhinoceroses or hippopotamuses, procured at genuinely enormous expense, specifically to demonstrate the sponsoring officials' wealth and, by extension, the vast geographic reach of Roman imperial power. Specially trained hunters known as venatores performed these staged hunts, often incorporating elaborate staged scenery and props designed to recreate specific mythological or geographic settings relevant to the particular animals, reflecting a level of theatrical production sophistication that historians consider genuinely comparable, in its own ancient context, to elaborate modern staged entertainment production. The logistics required to capture, transport, and maintain these animals until their appearance represented an enormous, genuinely impressive undertaking in its own right, requiring specialized transport ships, dedicated holding facilities, and considerable skilled staff, with historians studying the broader economic impact of these games, noting the animal trade likely represented a significant driver of long-distance Roman commercial activity connecting the capital to its distant provinces. Beyond pure spectacle, these hunts, like much of the day's broader programming, carried genuine political and social significance beyond simple entertainment, serving as a visible dramatic demonstration of Roman mastery over the natural world and over the empire's vast conquered territories. A message historians believe was entirely deliberate and genuinely central to the broader purpose these public games served within Roman civic life. The environmental impact of these regular animal hunts across several centuries was, according to modern historians and ecologists, genuinely significant, with some proposing sustained demand meaningfully contributed to documented population decline of certain large mammal species across North Africa and other regions, representing a lasting ecological consequence of Roman entertainment culture that extended well beyond the immediate spectacle experienced by the audience. Following the morning's animal hunts, the midday portion of a typical day's program often included public executions of condemned criminals, a component of Roman arena entertainment that responsible historical accounts must address honestly, even though it represents a genuinely difficult and uncomfortable aspect of ancient Roman public culture by modern ethical standards. These executions, involving individuals condemned under Roman law for serious crimes, were sometimes staged with deliberate theatrical or mythological framing, a practice ancient sources confirm, but that modern historians studying Roman entertainment culture generally interpret as reflecting the broader Roman approach toward public punishment, as simultaneously serving practical justice, public deterrence, and, however uncomfortably by modern standards, entertainment value within the same civic event. It is worth noting directly, for historical accuracy and honesty, that ancient Roman attitudes toward public execution differed substantially from prevailing modern ethical standards, reflecting a broader ancient world context in which public, sometimes elaborately staged punishment of condemned criminals was considered an acceptable component of public justice. A historical reality documentary treatment of this period should acknowledge factually, rather than either sensationalizing or omitting entirely. This midday period also sometimes included additional entertainment elements, including further staged animal encounters or comedic or theatrical performances, providing some variation in tone across the day's lengthy overall program, suggesting Roman audiences, much like modern audiences attending a sporting event, appreciated some genuine programming variety across an event that could extend across many hours of a single day. By early afternoon, as this midday program concluded, anticipation among the assembled crowd would typically begin building toward the day's main event, the gladiatorial combat that had become the arena's single most closely associated and culturally significant form of entertainment. Contrary to popular modern assumption, gladiators were not simply condemned criminals or randomly selected enslaved individuals thrown into combat with no preparation or skill. Instead, they represented a genuinely more complex professional category within Roman society, defined by rigorous training and social structure. Many gladiators trained extensively at specialized schools known as ludi, where they received systematic instruction in specific combat styles and weapon use. Their trainers were often former gladiators who had survived their own fighting careers and transitioned into training subsequent generations of fighters. Archaeological and skeletal evidence recovered from gladiator burial sites, notably in Ephesus, confirms these fighters received a nutrient-rich diet. Remarkably, evidence of medical care suggests they had access to some of the most advanced medical practices available anywhere in Roman society. Gladiators came from varied backgrounds. Some were indeed enslaved individuals or condemned criminals, sentenced to training as an alternative to immediate execution. However, evidence also confirms a significant number were free Roman citizens who voluntarily entered the profession for prize money and fame. For the successful few, a level of celebrity status emerged that carries striking similarity to modern professional athletic celebrity. This comparison remains uncomfortable given the mortal danger inherent to the profession, as gladiators faced real risk each time they entered the arena. It would be historically inaccurate to suggest death was rare. The profession remained dangerous, a fundamental reality no amount of training could eliminate. Historians propose fatality rates varied, with evidence suggesting death occurred in a minority rather than the majority of matches. Trained gladiators represented a significant financial investment for their owners, creating a real economic incentive toward preserving skilled fighters for future matches. Rather than treating every bout as a fatal conclusion, the goal was often to maintain a roster of experienced popular combatants for the public. Gladiatorial combat followed considerably more structured and regulated rules than popular modern imagination often assumes, with different categories of gladiators trained in specific fighting styles and equipped with distinctive weapons and armor designed to create genuinely varied, strategically interesting combat matchups for the assembled audience. The Myrmilio, heavily armored and armed with a short sword and large rectangular shield, represented one particularly popular gladiator category, frequently matched against the Thraex, a lighter armored fighter equipped with a curved short sword and smaller shield, creating a genuinely deliberate contrast in fighting style and strategic approach that Roman audiences appreciated and understood with tactical sophistication, comparable to how modern sports audiences might analyze different competitive strategies within a familiar athletic contest. Other notable gladiator categories included the retiarius, fighting with a net and trident, in a style deliberately evoking a fisherman, matched typically against the more heavily armored secutor, whose helmet design, notably featuring small restricted eye openings, was specifically engineered to prevent the trident's prongs from causing immediate serious injury, demonstrating attention to combat safety considerations. Matches were typically overseen by a referee, and surviving evidence, including detailed relief carvings and mosaic depictions discovered at various sites, confirms fights could be paused or stopped before reaching a fatal conclusion, with a defeated but surviving gladiator able to formally request mercy, typically by raising a finger in a gesture, ancient sources describe, signaling submission to the presiding official's ultimate judgment. This decision, contrary to widespread popular belief regarding a simple thumbs up or thumbs down gesture, involved a considerably more complex process, with historians noting genuine uncertainty regarding the precise historical gestures used, since the thumbs up interpretation derives from later artistic reinterpretation. Beyond the presiding official's formal judgment, crowd reaction itself frequently carried genuine practical influence over these life or death decisions, with surviving accounts describing audiences vocally expressing their preference regarding a defeated gladiator's fate, particularly for fighters who had demonstrated genuine courage and skill during their match, suggesting the crowd's collective judgment played a significant, if informal, role, alongside the presiding official's ultimate authority. The assembled Colosseum audience represented a genuine cross-section of Roman society, though seating arrangement, much like broader Roman social structure generally, reflected careful, deliberate hierarchical organization rather than open, undifferentiated public mixing. Senators and other high-ranking officials occupied the closest, most prestigious seating, immediately surrounding the arena floor, while ordinary citizens filled progressively higher seating tiers. With women, according to surviving Roman sources, generally restricted to the highest, most distant seating sections, a policy historians connect to broader period assumptions regarding appropriate public behavior and social visibility for Roman women. When present, the emperor himself occupied a dedicated, elevated box providing clear visibility across the entire arena, his presence at the games carrying genuine political significance beyond simple personal entertainment. Since public appearance represented an important, visible demonstration of imperial connection to and generosity toward the broader Roman population, a relationship central to how emperors maintained popular legitimacy and support throughout their reigns. The crowd itself was, according to contemporary accounts, genuinely vocal and actively engaged throughout the day's proceedings, cheering favored gladiators or expressing genuine displeasure toward perceived unfair matchups or poor sponsoring official generosity, and on documented occasions, becoming sufficiently agitated to require direct intervention to help maintain public order. Sponsoring officials frequently distributed gifts directly to the crowd during breaks in the day's programming, including food, small souvenirs, and on particularly generous occasions, tokens redeemable for genuinely valuable prizes, a practice identified as a deliberate strategy for building direct public goodwill and political support through visible public generosity. The Colosseum also served as a venue for the emperor to directly address the assembled Roman public, using the game's considerable crowd as a platform for announcing significant political or administrative decisions, further reinforcing the venue's broader function, extending well beyond simple entertainment into the practical machinery of Roman imperial governance and public communication during this historical period. Beneath the visible arena floor where combat and animal hunts unfolded, the Colosseum contained an extensive, genuinely sophisticated underground complex known as the Hypogeum. Its surviving physical remains continue impressing modern archaeologists and engineers studying ancient Roman construction and mechanical capability. This underground network included animal cages, gladiator holding areas, and most remarkably, an elaborate system of trapdoors and mechanical lifts, operated through a combination of pulleys, counterweights, and coordinated human labor, allowing animals and scenery to be raised dramatically. From the audience's perspective, these elements appeared seemingly instantaneously onto the arena floor above, creating genuinely impressive theatrical surprise. Historians consider these systems remarkably sophisticated for the available mechanical technology of this historical period. Archaeological excavation of these underground spaces, conducted extensively across the past century, has revealed physical evidence of this mechanical system. This includes surviving stone channels and mounting points that modern engineers have used to reconstruct probable operational mechanisms, confirming ancient Roman engineers possessed a sophisticated understanding of leverage, counterweights, and coordinated mechanical operation. Operating this complex system required considerable labor, with a substantial workforce, including both enslaved workers and specialized technical staff. They managed animal handling, mechanical lift operation, and general logistical coordination throughout each day's extensive program. This represented a significant, if less visible, category of labor essential to the spectacle beyond the performers seen by the audience. This hidden infrastructure, invisible to the audience experiencing the effortless appearance of animals, remains a reminder of Roman organizational sophistication. The Colosseum's famous spectacles depended on considerable unseen sophistication, extending well beyond the visible combat that has received popular historical attention. As the day's final matches concluded and evening approached, the enormous crowd began the same organized, efficient exit process that had brought them into the amphitheater. The crowds dispersed gradually back into the broader city as Rome's ordinary evening rhythm resumed. For the gladiators who had survived the day's combat, the aftermath involved medical treatment for injuries sustained during their matches, provided by specialized physicians. Historians note this accumulated experience treating trauma likely contributed valuable surgical knowledge that extended beyond the arena, influencing broader Roman medical practice. Successful gladiators who survived numerous matches could achieve a wooden training sword, known as a rudis, formally marking their release from obligation. Some successful former gladiators went on to train subsequent fighters, or, in rare cases, achieved social advancement beyond what their origins might suggest. Gladiatorial games continued for centuries, though historians note gradually declining frequency and scale beginning particularly from the 4th century onward. This was connected to the Roman Empire's conversion to Christianity, whose authorities increasingly expressed moral objection to the violent practice. Economic and political pressures also affected the empire's capacity to fund such elaborate, expensive public spectacles during this increasingly turbulent period. The formal end of the games is generally dated to the early 5th century, though animal hunts and other programming continued slightly longer. The amphitheater's decline paralleled the broader decline of the imperial system that had originally commissioned its construction. Nearly 2,000 years after its original construction, the Colosseum remains one of the most recognized and visited ancient structures anywhere in the world, standing as a genuinely powerful physical connection to this complex, often uncomfortable, but undeniably significant chapter of Roman civic and cultural history. Centuries following the end of the gladiatorial games themselves, the structure experienced considerable damage from earthquakes, stone removal for other construction projects, and general historical neglect, with much of its original marble facing and decorative elements gradually stripped away for reuse in other Roman building projects. Across subsequent centuries, a common historical fate shared by numerous ancient monuments across the broader Mediterranean world during the medieval period. Modern archaeological research, restoration efforts, and increasingly sophisticated engineering analysis have, particularly across the past several decades, meaningfully expanded scholarly understanding of the structure's original construction methods, operational mechanisms, and broader historical and social significance, continuing to refine and, in some specific details, revise previous historical assumptions as new evidence and analytical techniques become available. Standing today within the Colosseum's massive, weathered stone interior, it becomes possible to appreciate both the genuine engineering and organizational sophistication that made such an ambitious structure and its elaborate daily programming possible, while also honestly confronting the genuinely complex, sometimes deeply uncomfortable historical reality of what actually occurred within its walls, a combination of remarkable human achievement and genuine human cruelty that, taken together, offers a considerably more complete and honest understanding of Roman civilization than either simple celebration or simple condemnation could provide on its own. The arena floor itself is long gone, its underground mechanisms now open to the sky, but the stones remain, still standing, still waiting for anyone willing to look closely enough to understand the full, complicated story they continue to tell.